Now we're going to use what we know about fiscal policy to apply them to real situations. So in a second you can pause this and see if you can answer the questions correctly. So during what phase in the business cycle would expansionary fiscal policy be used? What is real GDP growth? What is unemployment? What happens to taxes and government spending? So go ahead and pause it now if you haven't already. So when we use expansionary fiscal policy, it's because we're in a recession. Real GDP growth is negative, unemployment is high, maybe like 8%, because remember full employment's 5%, so pretty much like above 7% would be a problem. What happens to taxes and government spending? Congress decreases taxes, increases government spending, helping to get us out of the recession by boosting aggregate demand, increasing it. Same thing as we just did for contractionary fiscal policy. So go ahead and pause whenever you feel like it. During what phase in the business cycle is this used? What is wrong in the economy? What happens to taxes and government spending? So go ahead and pause it. Contractionary fiscal policy is used during a peak. What's wrong in the economy? There's high inflation. So inflation that's normal is 1 to 3%. So let's say above 5 or 6% inflation. That's key that the problem is there's a peak, and that's what needs to be fixed. And Congress will increase taxes and decrease government spending to reduce aggregate demand to get price level and inflation back under control. Here's situation 1. What I want you to do with this slide is graph in your notes. So situation 1 says real GDP is negative 3%, inflation is 0%, unemployment is 10%. So you have to identify what phase in the business cycle we're in and then draw the graph. So go ahead and hit pause now, and then I will put the answer up on the screen. So here's what the graph looks like of the current situation. Aggregate demand is low, we're in a recession, real GDP is negative, unemployment is way too high. Long run aggregate supply, remember, goes through the expansion phase of SRAS. So now, the type of fiscal policy would be used would be expansionary fiscal policy to get aggregate demand back to a level of potential output or where it meets the two supply curves. So what would happen then, we'd notice that price level would rise from where it was before, and then real GDP would also rise due to the increase in aggregate demand from an expansionary fiscal policy, lowering taxes, increasing government spending. You can probably guess what this situation is going to depict, but real GDP is 7%, inflation is 7%, and unemployment is 4.3%. So hit pause and try to graph the current situation, what type of fiscal policy we're going to use, and then fix the graph. So here's the current state of the economy. Currently aggregate demand is in the vertical phase or the peak phase of the business cycle on the SRAS curve. So price level's too high. Real GDP is above the long run aggregate supply, but the problem with this is that it comes with an increased price level. So to fix the graph, we would use contractionary fiscal policy, increase taxes, decrease government spending, which would decrease aggregate demand back down to where the supply curves meet. So we have Y2, and price level gets back under control. And that is how you would use fiscal policy.